Well, Unit 2 is all about the cardiovascular system, Week 2. But if you look through all of the learning objectives and in the other weeks, you'll find that we don't have anything there about the circulatory system. And it's sort of an overarching system. So I want to make it clear that there's a distinction between the two and what the circulatory system is. The cardiovascular system basically is limited to the heart and blood vessels, and some people would include the lungs. But the question is, what does it do? It pumps fluid, it pumps blood. So we have the heart, we have arteries, which are tubes that are muscular, and they always take blood away from the heart. And then we have veins, which are less muscular, not as strong, and bring fluid back to the heart, blood and plasma, back to the heart, what we call blood, cells and plasma. And when it comes back to the heart, the fluid is under less pressure because it's a long way from the pump in the first place. Those vessels have valves in them, you'll learn that. And it is your skeletal muscles that helps the heart to bring that fluid back. But what is the circulatory system? Well, the circulatory system includes the cardiovascular system, the respiratory system, and the lymphatic system. It includes all the fluids and the structures through which those fluids circulate in your body. So think of circulation like a merry-go-round or a choo-choo train. When I was a kid in Wisconsin Dells, there was at the corner of Highway 12 and 33, where now a Walgreens is and other things. There's a Walgreens there, and there's a McDonald's there, and there's a little strip mall there, which has Starbucks and an ice cream place, and I think even a cell phone business. Well, that, when I was a child, was Fort Dells. And inside the walls of Fort Dells, Black Bart would get captured every day by the sheriff. And the most fun thing for little kids, like I was to get on the little choo-choo train and take the tour around inside the park that was Fort Dells. And of course, we just went in a circle, and then when we'd get back to the beginning, we'd get off and other kids would get on, or maybe we'd just stay on for a couple times around. They usually would allow that. And we had a great fun. And now that train has been rehabilitated, I think, and has been moved out of the woods where it was laying in ruins and brought to the Timavati Wildlife Park. At any rate, think of the train as the circulatory structures. Think of the cars that you would sit in as the blood cells, and think of the people sitting in there as the hemoglobin that carried the oxygen. The purpose of the cardiovascular system is simply to bring oxygen from the lungs to perfuse it through all the tissues of the body, and to pick up a lot of the carbon dioxide that is a waste of metabolism and return it to the lungs for expulsion. So the lungs are an excretory organ. But they're also an organ that takes in, or that feeds you by taking in oxygen that you have to have. The respiratory system is a part of the circulatory system because it is the way you get fresh air into your air sacs, where the oxygen can jump on to those cars and get on that train to get to other parts of the body. And then CO2 in the form of bicarbonate can jump into that fluid and be returned to the lungs and expelled, because you need to get rid of that waste, or you will die, because your blood and your other fluids will become too acidic and your biochemical reactions will not work properly and your proteins will denature. your actual blood acidity and your fluid acidity has to range between 7.35 of a pH, 7.35 to 7.45, and or you die. That's it. It's a very narrow range for the most part. The lymphatic system includes lymph nodes, which are filters for the fluid, and the spleen, which is a filter for the fluid. And these are places where white cells attack bad guys, as well as that might get into your body, as well as start to eliminate toxins and stuff. But actually the toxins are eliminated by your liver, another fluid, another system or filter in the system is your liver, acts as a filter in part, among other things, and your kidneys, which also filter the fluids in your body to get rid of waste through your urination. So the circulatory system's a big deal, and it contains a lot of organs and a lot of fluids. So what are the fluids? Well, blood is the main one that you studied last week, and it consists of red cells and white cells and platelets, and plasma, which is like Gatorade, only better. It has more good stuff in it than Gatorade. Gatorade's primarily electrolytes or salts, and plasma has proteins and glucose and electrolytes, and it's balanced to be perfect for your body. Well, when the plasma is going through capillary beds, it is natural for it to skeet out, to leak out into the surrounding tissue. And when it does, we call that interstitial fluid. So plasma becomes interstitial fluid. The same thing happens in the ventricles of the brain, the spaces in the brain. There are blood vessels there, capillary beds that leak plasma, and we call that plasma cerebrospinal fluid. If some of this interstitial fluid, and you've seen interstitial fluid because you've all had blisters, and that's why I put this picture here. That clear liquid inside of that blister is interstitial fluid. When that interstitial fluid happens to be picked up through hydrostatic pressure and fluid dynamics by the lymph vessels, all of it doesn't go there, but about 10% of it does. Then we call it lymph. It's still plasma. It's still interstitial fluid. It's lymph. But the name we give this fluid depends really upon where it is more than what it is. Okay? So we have some special areas too, that fluids that circulate. Our lacrimal fluid coming from our tear, the lacrimal glands above our eyelids that produce tears. They go down to your lacrimal gland, into your back of your throat, and you swallow it. It's absorbed in your digestive system and circulates. Saliva is another fluid that's produced by glands, and you would call it spit, but it's an enzyme-rich digestive fluid, and it, of course, goes into your digestive system, and the water is absorbed, and it circulates. Okay, so all of this stuff circulates, and it picks up metabolic wastes along the way that have to be cleaned from your system. You know, you can do a little simple test. I was listening last night after I went to bed to Pandora on my iPad, and it seemed like it kept getting louder and louder and louder, which it appeared to do because my cerebrospinal fluid was being cleaned while I was half awake, and as it was cleaned, my hearing improved, because my hearing is detected and filtered and made sense of by areas in my brain. So what causes circulation of these fluids so they can go through all of these different filters in our bodies and get cleaned? Well, our heart is the main pump, but it's not the only pump. And without the other pumps, the heart wouldn't last so long, and we would die younger. We can give our heart a lot of help with our skeletal muscles by exercising, because those skeletal muscles push the fluid as they crimp or constrict the blood vessels. and they constrict lymph vessels, which also the larger ones have some muscles in them, and our veins have some muscles in them. Lymph vessels and veins both have check valves in them to keep the fluid going in the right direction. So it cannot go backwards unless you have damaged valves, in which case you might have swollen legs. You've seen people with swollen legs and wearing the pressure bandages to try to keep that fluid going in the right direction. Well, that's what's happening. And then there's fluid dynamics. Fluid dynamics are important because fluid dynamics, the fluid is sticky, and when it moves, the fluid behind it has to move with it. So it pulls it along, sort of. So that's a part of the causes of circulation also. Gravity is certainly involved, and the position of your body has an impact. So your heart works harder when you're sitting up, your blood pressure is higher when you're sitting up, and when you lay down, even if you're not sleeping, when you lay down, your blood pressure goes down. Your heart doesn't have to work as hard. So if you exercise, you actually help your heart by giving it some relief from all the work that it has to do. Now we're going to go on and talk about a few other aspects, and I'll probably have to stick that in another second video, but that'll be a continuation of this. And so the main message here is, the main big idea is that the circulatory system is not the same as the cardiovascular system, and that the cardiovascular system, which you're primarily studying this week, is a significant part of the circulatory system, but in and of itself is not the circulatory system. It is only a part of it. Okay, thanks.